All right, this is my top 5 disappointing books of 2018. Now, disappointing does not mean the worst. As a matter of fact, 2 of the books on this list aren't even on my worst books list. These are just books that they started out promising but went south really quickly, or I expected more from them because they came from an author that does good work otherwise. This is simply just 5 books I found incredibly disappointing. Before I get into that, let's do a couple dishonorable mentions. The Big Wave by Pearl Buck. This actually got a good grade for me. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe I gave it a B or a B-. But it's just, you could see the makings of a good story, but it was incredibly rushed. There was a lot of very sloppy exposition told to us by the main character's father in lieu of just actually showing us the story. And that disappointed me because Pearl Buck is an amazing writer, and she's an amazing example for any writer, even female. Like, she's an inspiration for female writers all over the world. And The Big Wave could have been so much better than what it was. And then we have The Mistress of Tall Acre, another book that got a decent grade for me. I did a 1-minute Mania review of it. Mostly because if I tried to do a full-length review, it would have been like 70 minutes long. This is a book that's basically about a girl named Sophie, who is a Scottish immigrant who marries a guy who was in the army during the Revolutionary War. And there's just so much. This is one giant freaking soap opera. It is a soap opera. Because you've got Sophie marrying this guy, and then she has to, get in the good graces of his daughter. But then she's Scottish, so she's being discriminated against. But then she loses her house because her brother goes to be with their defecting father. But then Lily Kate, her husband's daughter's family, wants to take Lily Kate, and then turns out his first wife isn't actually dead, and then there's all this intrigue, and then Lily Kate gets kidnapped, and holy shit. I'm not kidding. This book it's like someone made a casserole out of everything they had in their pantry. There's a little bit of everything in there, but that doesn't mean it tastes good. It's just kind of confusing, and you wonder how they managed. Anyway, let's get down to the actual list. Number 5, The Gunslinger by Stephen King. Alright. For a book that was supposed to start the series that King considers his magnum opus, it was really dry and pretentious. And I'm going to go into detail about it now because it's only a dishonorable mention in my top 10 worst. But The Gunslinger is poorly written, has some really, really awful word choices. Words like bovinely, lumpishly. I've seen high schoolers write better. And to say that about Stephen King, it kind of kills me inside, because I'm a huge fan of Stephen King, but I'm not going to sugarcoat shit. And this book was bad. It had a lot of decent ideas, which is why I didn't give it a 0, I gave it an F. But it's just, he finally was doing something a little different. He wasn't following his usual tropes, he was doing something different, and just, the writing was awful. I think he reused the sentence, or not even a sentence, the phrase, the boy, 130 some times throughout the book. He wouldn't say he wouldn't call the kid by his name, it was the boy, the boy, the boy. The boy was used at least 5 times a page, and when you have that much repetitive usage, it stands out after a while. And as a final note to any author, you probably shouldn't brag about how long it took you to write it. Oh, well, I started working on this in college. It took me 12 years. Well, good for you. Now you're going to have assholes like me saying, wow, it took you 12 years to write it? Why didn't you make it good? This book came out after the likes of Carrie and Cujo, and I think it even came out after Misery and The Shining. Okay, I feel like once you work on a book for 12 years, either scrap it or take a look at it and say, okay, is this what I want? Because when you release it and say, oh, this took me this many years, and it's crap, like I said, assholes like me are gonna go, you couldn't have made it good? Number 4, Life and Death. So this is a Stephenie Meyer book, and someone's like, oh, Stephenie Meyer on a list of disappointing books, no shit. I like Twilight. I am a grown man who has the balls to say that I like Twilight. Why? Because it's the ultimate guilty pleasure series. Oh my god. I love it. It's so bad, I love it. I have all of her books. And the thing is, I actually really like Stephenie Meyer as a person. Unlike people like, E.L. James, Erica Mitchell, whatever the fuck she goes by, I actually think Stephenie Meyer, from what I've seen of her, is a pretty decent person. And she didn't choose to have Twilight sell, hundreds of millions of copies. She was just a mom who wrote a fantasy book that hit off. And if it hadn't, people wouldn't give a shit. But it did. And 10 years after the first book was published, Stephenie Meyer decided to double down and write Life of Death, a book that exists purely because she wanted to try and not make Bella look like a damsel. This is already on my top 10 worst. Trust me, it is. So I'm not going to go into detail about what I just said, but there is a certain expectation for me when it comes to Stephenie Meyer books. I don't expect them to be good. I just want to laugh and be like, oh my god, this is amazing. And I was just annoyed the entire time I read this. I really was. Number 3, Reflections by Nora Roberts. In my review of Reflections, I said that I have this curse with Nora Roberts, where for every good book of hers I read a bad one right after. So I read Luring a Lady at the beginning of this year. Fantastic, amazing book. And then I read Reflections towards the end of the year, and yeah, it's awful. It's like an abusive relationship. Nora and I have a very abusive relationship when it comes to her books, because no matter how bad her shit can get, I will always go back. And every single time I read a bad book of hers, it's never just like, nope, there's another bad Nora book. It's always, how dare she? Oh my god. Every single time. I just can't seem to get it through my head that she writes bad books, because she is so immensely talented in so many ways, and it just shocks me every time she shits something out and puts a name on it, and it turns out to be just that. Shit. Number 2, Spatial Delivery. Oh my god. This thing was boring. Fuck, so boring. Guys. Oh my god. Oh, that's basically why it's on here. If you look at the book, it has this really cool cover. And I saw it and I was thinking, oh, this might be like fun, goofy, kind of corny sci-fi action. And no, it was just boring. I fell asleep reading it multiple times. It took me a week to finish this, 120-page, 130-page book. And keep in mind, I read all of the Twilight books this year in about 2 weeks. 1,000 pages worth of content, 2 weeks. Couldn't finish a 130-page book in a week because of how boring it was. And I forget to mention this book's boring. It's the most boring thing I've ever read. And I've read the Bible. Just saying. Alright, my number 1 most disappointing book. This is a recent review. If you guys have been keeping up with my reviews, you'll probably know what it is. It is The Welshman's Bride by Margaret Moore. There are some things in this book that aren't good. Like, there's this chick has magic powers to set up a subplot about Genevieve not being able to have children. Instead of just having it to where they fuck a bunch and she never gets pregnant, and then they're like, oh, I'm barren. No, this woman's just like, I have psychic powers. You are barren. Aside from that, though, the characters are actually pretty decent up until the very end. And it's an okay romance. I'm talking, it was like a B- B range romance. Until the ending. I'm not kidding, the last 20 pages of this book went off the rails in glorious fashion. Genevieve and Dylan get into a fight, Genevieve runs away, and then Dylan just turns into an angry rapist. Or attempted rapist. He tries to force himself on one of the maids, starts screaming at everyone and abusing everyone because his wife left him. And then he rides off to find her and breaks his fucking leg. Oh my god, I don't know why I find that so funny, but he snaps his leg, and he's laying there in the dirt. Genevieve, I love you! And she's just, Dylan! And rushes to him. And the entire subplot about her being barren just goes nowhere. He's just like, I don't care if you're barren, the end, subplot done. It honestly, it was an okay book. But that ending, it was like a giant slap to the face. Sudden 180 turnaround for characters. Suddenly she's gone. Then he goes to get her. Then he breaks his fucking leg. I can't say that without laughing. It's just, I have never had a book slap me in the face before like that. Just bitch slap, you know, gotcha, bitch. I remember, I'm not lying, I finished reading it, and I was sitting in my kitchen, because I have a table set up in my kitchen where I record my videos and stuff, and I'm reading this book, and I'm just sitting there staring at it once it ends, and I just can't seem to understand what just happened. So like, well, I guess it's over. What the fuck? It was like that one sex experience where he's just like, oh, did you like it? And you just look at him like, I didn't feel anything. Anyway, my top 10 worst of this year is coming out very shortly. I'm gonna do the top 10 worst first because I want to talk about something nice at the end. Because after the year I've had, I want to end the year with something nice.